Hi, Rama. It's week 48, day 3 of our Bible narrative reading plan. Today we are in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs chapters 23 and 24. You may think, wait a minute, those are not Proverbs, and we've been in the middle of the book of Acts. Well, we're going to return to Acts, but remember that this Bible reading plan was designed to cover the grand narrative of Scripture because we believe that God's story shapes us. God has given us His grand story, and God has made us people who love stories, and we're shaped by stories. And so this reading plan is designed to form us and shape us by God's big story and to help us see God's big story. But it's also designed to take us through the poetry of Scripture, the Psalms and the Proverbs, because God shapes us through these as well. So throughout the year, we've been reading Psalms and we've been reading Proverbs, and I haven't always made comments on them in the videos just for the sake of time, but today's reading is simply Proverbs 23 and 24. If you remember from your reading in the book of Proverbs, chapters 1 through 9 or so, they're kind of bigger units, and we can kind of make comments about grand sections of Proverbs. They tell bigger stories, so to speak. They're bigger ideas with lots of verses. But in this section of Proverbs, starting in chapter 10, you get lots of short, pithy statements. You get one or two verses that go together, and then the subject changes. It goes to something else entirely. But don't make the mistake that some Christians make and think that Proverbs are essentially Christian fortune cookies. That's not what these are. These are God's words of wisdom given to us, and we're to wrestle with them and to chew on them and think on them. And as you read today through Proverbs 23 and 24, notice how some of those things sound very ancient in the words that they use, and they sound like they're referring to things that we don't necessarily talk about, and they have images and items in the verses that don't necessarily apply to our lives. At least they're not tools and items, things that we use all the time. But the principle behind them does apply to our lives today. So wrestle with the Proverbs and think, how can I apply these today to my own life? But there's other things that are so timeless, not just in their principle, but even in their words. They just jump off the page at you and think, wow, this really could be written today. So some of the Proverbs sound ancient. Some of them sound like they could have been written yesterday, but they're all God's wisdom given to us for our life today. The Bible is given to us for our lives and our devotion to Christ. And so as you read these Proverbs, let the Lord shape you in how to live your life as a life of wisdom. Here's a summary of today's reading. For more information, go to tunemyheart.org.